of us are probably aware that one of the reasons for the founding of the UN chapter was to protect human rights and to avoid or prevent the scourge of war. So all of us here could probably call ourselves humanitarians, internationalists, and compassionate people. It's really difficult to just walk the streets of San Francisco because there are so many miserable people living on the streets, and some out of sight, as you know, some sleeping on sofas or sleeping in automobiles. Personally, I was an outpatient at a hospital nearby and was going to my appointment and saw it looked like a man sitting in a wheelchair with a hospital blanket over his head, stooped over. And then another person wrapped up completely in a comforter at the bus stop. When I left my appointment, they were still there, all wrapped up, and thought, how can this be? Here are some of the most affluent people in the world walking by, and no one has asked them, are you okay? So I went to the man in the wheelchair, slumped over, and asked him if he was okay. He pulled the blanket off his head. I had to do it, actually. He said he'd been released from the hospital 2 hours prior, and he showed me his leg. They'd cut off the lower part of his trouser, and his leg was cold, and he had a bandage on his leg. He'd been stabbed, and he had blood on his hands, and yet he'd been released from the hospital. I went in, I said, what would you like? Coffee. I went into the coffee shop, and there were wonderful, beautiful young people looking out the window at this person. I went into my mother mode and said, do you see that person? He needs help. Are you going to help him? I'm getting him some coffee. So the bagels came out and so forth. I was ready to lead a demonstration and have people call the hospital administration. The other person wrapped up turned out to be a 19-year-old, and I offered to help, and he said, no, I will not accept help from you. I won't let you help me. And that was a very defiant, independent young man. He looked like, well, maybe he was going to be okay. So these are heartbreaking experiences. I called Nelson, who is our moderator, because he is a very special person. He has founded the nonprofit San Francisco Urban Angels to deliver food, clothing, medicine to people living on the street. And we decided, well, we're going to be in the passion. All of us are in the passion. And that's really what compels us to put on this program and bring this incredible group of people to you. Nelson is very special. He's on our board, and he chairs the Sustainable Development Committee. And he's a real advocate and humanitarian. He gives to everything. He's incredible as a trial lawyer. He's incredible as a volunteer. We're so honored to have him. And Nelson, would you take over, please?
I joined the United Nations Association 3 years ago and was asked to be on the board. And at that time, it was a wonderful board, but it was a little bit sleepy. And Mary took over, and as we had our board meeting here today, we had 21 board members in attendance. Could the board members that are still here raise your hand so you can look around and see who's on our board? So if you have questions about the... And we have a lot of diversity on our board. I counted 12 women and 3 men at our board of directors meeting, and we had representatives from 6 different countries at our board meeting. We're truly an international, intergenerational as well. We have a wide range of age groups. I'm obviously one of the elders, but there's a lot of people who we would call younger. So I think this board is going in the right direction, and it's a lot of the credit goes to Mary. So I'd like to give Mary Steiner, our president, a round of applause. And one other digression. Next year will be, as she said, the 75th anniversary of the signing of the UN Charter in this building. And that is like a big wedding anniversary, the 75th. So if you're interested in being on the UN 75 committee, or you want to just be a part of it in some way, shape, or form, helping spread the word and understanding the ideals for which it stands, contact one of the board members or myself and Mary, and we will certainly welcome your participation. Homelessness is a big problem. It's hard to get our arms around it. And we have some of the best experts who are working to solve the homeless situation in San Francisco with us today. And you probably think I'm talking about our speakers, and I am. But I'm also talking about our exhibitors that are here today. And I want to read their names off and ask you if you would mind giving them a round of applause as we go through. So first one is Code Tenderloin. Downtown Streets, Huckleberry Youth Services, Glide, The Healing Well, It's Your District, Larkin Street Youth Services, North Beach Citizens, St. Francis Homelessness Challenge, Soul Stop, Urban Angels SF, and the Western Regional Advocacy Project, WRAP. And later in the program, we're going to bring a representative from each one of those organizations up here to receive a special sign of gratitude from us, and so you'll see them again in the program. So it's my great pleasure to introduce our speakers today. I'm just going to tell you who they are, and then our first speaker is going to be Paul Bowden, so I'm going to introduce him last, and also tell you a little bit about the agenda for today. So we have our four speakers. Paul Bowden, the director of WRAP, and he's formerly the executive director of the San Francisco Coalition on Homelessness for 16 years. Manohar Raju, who was sworn in as our new public defender in April of this year, and he'll be running for re-election in November, or for election in November. Jeff Kositsky, the executive director of the San Francisco Department of Homelessness and Supportive Housing since the department's inception in 2016, and who has since then made significant strides to bring essential services to tens of thousands of unhoused people in San Francisco. And also Erica Dan, who is a volunteer at Glide, and she works at Google as an operations and business partner, and she's also the reigning Miss California. So give an applause for our four speakers. Thank you. As Mary explained, this program is part of our Rules of Law series. The United Nations Association of San Francisco is focusing on the rule of law this year with all of our programs. And the main rule of, or the rules of law were the point is, how are we implementing the global goals for sustainable development? And there's 17 of them. And number 11 is make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. And 11.1 really zeroes in on today's topic: ensure access to adequate, safe, and affordable housing and basic services and upgrade slums. And I was in Africa, in Rwanda, and I saw some slums that were horrible. And then I came back here and I saw some living situations that didn't look a lot different. And so we want to know what the rule of law is, policies, procedures, and guidelines for how we as San Franciscans and Californians and Americans are getting people those essential services. And so our speakers will be touching on those topics today.